My name is Christina van Aertsen. I'm a transformational nutrition coach, in case you don't know me, and I'm showing women how to successfully lose weight for the last time. I went live in this group last week and I talked about the 6 steps to get started with your New Year's resolutions. So go back if you haven't watched it. And this week I'm going to talk about how hormones impact your weight. A very interesting topic. Before I dive in, just to let you know, I cannot see who's joining live. So if you want to stay anonymous, then just don't do anything, just keep watching. If you want me to know that you've joined, just leave me a little comment so that I can see that you're there. And if you have any questions, either while I'm live or when you're watching the replay, just keep commenting. I will get back to everyone either during the live or afterwards. So, what are hormones? So hormones, you can imagine them as little messengers circulating through your body. So they're released by your endocrine system at places like your thyroid, adrenal glands, or your ovaries. They travel to cells to initiate a reaction. So it could be starting your periods or moving glucose into cells when you've eaten sugar. And they literally regulate millions of functions. And one of them is your metabolism. So your metabolism is the rate at which you burn calories, which determines your energy levels and your weight. So very important. It plays a central part in all of my programs. So I help you kickstart metabolism to increase fat burning. To do their job properly, hormones must be in perfect balance. So not too little and not too much. And your body is busy constantly adjusting them like a thermostat, the temperature in your house. So there's like a constant feedback loop. So if it's dropping too low, then it will increase them and vice versa. But external factors can also influence your hormones. So that could be, for example, exposure to light affects your melatonin production. This is why it's so important to spend some time outside, especially in the morning, because then your body produces melatonin, which will then help you in the evening to fall asleep better. It is when you're connecting with someone you love, it increases your oxytocin levels. Stress, of course, impacts your cortisol levels, and smelling your favorite food activates your digestive hormones. So a lot is happening through these external factors. Your hormones are like an orchestra. So when one instrument is out of tune, then the whole symphony just sounds terrible. So what are we looking at today? Today I want to zoom in on metabolism. So your hormones are closely tied to your metabolism because only when it's running smoothly, you're able to burn fat efficiently and maintain your weight. Your metabolism also determines your energy, your moods, your appetites, your sleep, and your immune system. So it's responsible for quite a lot of areas in your body. And you might have noticed that from your mid-30s, diets no longer work as well as they used to, and it's getting more difficult to shed extra pounds. So from my previous webinars, you know that counting calories or excessive cardio is not the solution. Instead, maintaining gut health, focusing on resistance training, and eating the right food is much more effective because it impacts your metabolism and helps you balance your hormones. There's actually lots of confusion and contradicting information because not everything works for everyone. So that's just something to keep in mind when the keto diet just works perfectly for your girlfriend. That doesn't necessarily mean it will work in the same way for you. So what you need to do is you need to find out what works for you. So which hormones are the main players for weight loss? What do you think is the number one bad boy of hormones? Have a guess. I'll reveal it anyway if you don't know. So it's insulin. Excess insulin causes weight gain. It causes inflammation and chronic disease like diabetes. And as a colleague of mine puts it, it's a fat cell fertilizer. So other hormones are affecting your weight as well. So your thyroid hormones, cortisol, your sex hormones. So they all have an impact on your weight. But let's look at these one by one. And we're starting, obviously, with the most important one, insulin. So insulin regulates your blood sugar. And you can imagine it like a key for your cells to unlock the cells and let them absorb glucose so that they can be used for energy. So where does the glucose come from? It comes from sugar, obviously, but also from foods loaded with simple carbohydrates like white rice or white bread. So those foods cause a sudden blood sugar spike, and your body reacts to that with a release of insulin to help absorb the glucose. It will then use whatever glucose it needs right away. So if you are active, then it will use that as energy for you being active. And anything that is left over will be stored in the liver, but the liver has only limited capacity to house it. So roughly 150 grams, and then the liver is full. And anything above that is stored as fat. And this is where the problem starts. So what are the risks with insulin? As I said, you store fat, that's one of the risks, but you can also develop pre-diabetes, which means your body struggles to absorb glucose. So it stays longer in your system and can cause damage. I have a rule of thumb. So when you have insulin in your system, you store fat, and otherwise you burn fat. So you want to reduce the amount of time when you have insulin flooding through your veins to a minimum, because that's the time when you store fat. So here's the action plan to keep insulin at bay. So first, reduce your stress levels, because that will affect insulin resistance. Then get enough quality sleep, which is generally important. Exercise regularly and move regularly, so not just exercise, but also movement. Limit exposure to toxins, and eat a diet high in fiber, low in sugar, and with plenty of whole foods. On to the next, the thyroid. So the thyroid hormones. So here's a shocking stat. In the US, 1 in 5 women have a low thyroid function. And your thyroid is responsible for the rate at which you burn energy. It's closely connected to your brain and your gut and influences what's going on there. So your diet, overall nutrition, stress levels, and environmental toxins influence the function of your thyroid. And your liver plays a crucial part in the excretion of thyroid hormones. So according to Dr. Alan Christensen, he's a naturopathic medical doctor from the US who specializes in thyroid disorders, it can slow down your metabolism by literally hundreds of calories a day if it doesn't manage them properly. And research also shows that celiac disease and gluten intolerance increase the risk to thyroid disease and is a common cause of hypothyroidism. That's an underperforming thyroid when everything slows down. Here again, environmental toxins like pesticides from food that isn't organic and heavy metals interfere with your thyroid function. And then lack of certain minerals and vitamins like selenium, zinc, iodine, and omega-3 fatty acids, they can all slow things down. Optimal thyroid function plays a vital role in maintaining a healthy weight, and hypothyroid is a major player in weight loss resistance, so keep that in mind. So what's the action plan for your thyroid? Avoid gluten. It's causing a leaky gut, so it's not a good food to eat anyway. And instead eat food rich in trace minerals that you need for thyroid hormone production. So that could be wild-caught fish, seaweed, pumpkin seeds, oysters, and Brazil nuts. There's a whole range of food that provide you with all those minerals and vitamins that you need for optimal thyroid function. If you can't get them from food, get a high-quality supplement to support your thyroid, and generally create a relaxing environment at meal times. Which brings us to the next one, cortisol. So cortisol helps manage blood pressure. It regulates inflammation. It balances your blood sugar, and it supports your thyroid. So you see, they all connect with each other. It's like a big web of hormones, and they all influence each other. It's all good when production is balanced, but if it's not, it impacts all of those areas, but particularly your thyroid. But cortisol is not just bad. So it's an important hormone for your survival. It kicks in when you're stressed, and it helps you to run faster, to see and hear better. It fuels you with glucose to provide quick energy. And it's the famous tiger. So if you meet the famous tiger, which none of us does, you can run away. And what helps you in that process is cortisol. But what it also does is it shuts down everything that you don't need in moments like that. So your digestion will be shut down. It slows down your metabolism, and it can even break down muscle tissue if it needs more quick energy and there isn't enough glucose in your system. So this is all good when you are actually in danger. And as I said, it hardly ever happens that we're really in danger and we need it. But it becomes a problem when you're chronically stressed. So chronic stress is something to really keep an eye on, because it very often happens in your subconsciousness. So this could be financial concerns, it could be family stress, it can even be your emotions. All of that stresses you, and sometimes you're not even aware that you're stressed. But also eating food that is highly inflammatory or lacks key nutrients can stress your body. So if you have this prolonged chronic stress, this can be a major cause for weight gain, because it increases your blood sugar, so you will be high in blood sugar, increases your belly fat, it increases your blood pressure, and high cholesterol will be created and muscle loss. So quite a lot of things that are happening thanks to an increased level of cortisol. So how can you reduce cortisol? Eat an anti-inflammatory diet, and then work on your mindset. So this is generally important, that you think about that stress is never really an actual threat. So it's, you perceive something as a threat, and that influences your thoughts. So if you decide you're not stressed and you keep telling you that, so then it switches from being stressed by something that is actually not a real stress, so there's no reason to run away. It's just the way how you manage it. I mean, it's obviously, it's not so easy when your boss is hanging over you and reminds you of a deadline, and that stresses you. But it's really your decision to get stressed at that moment that makes you feel stressed. So what you can do is just really actively relax every day, so that your body gets used to relaxing. And especially when you're getting stressed. So you can practice yoga. Yoga is fantastic for your mindset and overall well-being. You can meditate, which is basically giving your body like a breather, like 10 to 20 minutes, when it can really relax and slow the nervous system down, and work on your breathing. So breathing is really powerful. What you do is when you're getting stressed, is that you start breathing very flat, so just in the top part of your chest. So if you want to slow that down, you start to do deep belly breaths, breaths, and that will really help you to de-stress in a moment like that. I also recommend to disconnect from the virtual world and make time for real life with your friends and family, and spend more time in nature. So that's scientifically proven that if you spend, I think, 10 to 15 minutes in a forest environment, for example, it calms down your nervous system. So lastly, your sex hormones. So that's no surprise that an imbalance of estrogen and testosterone can influence your weight. And abnormal levels of estrogen can directly lead to metabolic disease and obesity. And the interesting point here is that low levels of estradiol, which is one of the estrogens, can reduce fat burning, increase your appetite, and redistribute fat to your belly. But too much can create more subcutaneous fat, which can then produce more estrogen. And the more fat you make, the higher the estrogen rises. So just so that you really got that, your fat can produce estrogen, and then you get into this vicious cycle, and that estrogen then increases your fat. So you just really want to get out of that. So this is why it's so important to keep an eye on your insulin to reduce fat storage as much as possible. So one of the things that can help is keeping your gut healthy, because it helps you balance your sex hormones, and you do that with enough fiber. And because if you don't have enough fiber in your diet, or for example you had too many antibiotics treatments, that can damage the delicate gut microbiome, and that leads then to estrogen to spike because your body can't properly detox. And with detox, I mean going to the toilet, ideally once a day. Environmental toxins also play a major role in sex hormone balance. So our environment includes an increasing number of pesticides that act just like estrogen, even in low doses. And an interesting fact is that cholesterol produces testosterone, which is important for building muscle, and that's what we want, and other important functions. And lastly, eating a low-fat diet can result in low cholesterol, which can then impact your testosterone production. So all this craze about keeping your fat low, if it's too low, this can also have a negative impact. So you see, everything is intertwined, and what you do in extreme in one area will likely have a negative impact somewhere else. So here's the action plan to balance your sex hormones. So eat with your hormones in mind, balance your diet. So make sure it's low in sugar, it's high in healthy fats, and provides you with enough fiber. You can get your fiber really easily through like a few tablespoons of linseeds or chia seeds, and put that in your morning protein shake, and then you're good to go, and probably good to go to the toilet, which is the next point. So try to go at least once a day to eliminate toxins, and you'll see this will also do wonders to your bloating. Limit or remove alcohol. It slows down metabolism anyway and compromises your liver, which helps you detox and metabolize estrogen. And lastly, move regularly. Exercise helps balance your hormones. It reduces estrogen if it's dominant, and increases testosterone, which helps you lose fats and build muscle. So I hope this was not too much information. There's so much more that I could have shared. If you like this topic and you find it interesting, I can talk about this more. There are some other hormones to take a look at, or we can zoom into one of the ones I mentioned today. And if you want to check back next week, I'm going to talk about eating for gut health, which will be another fascinating topic. Until then, take care and have a nice week.